Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled renter trashes my property and then locks me out of my own house and refuses to leave after getting evicted. Here is what happened. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoy my content. I was living with my husband in a house that had more rooms than we needed. We were lucky to get the house on a good market, and at the beginning actually were living in it with another married couple. They moved out though, and we were left with the house for just the two of us. We had the great idea of renting out one of the bedrooms. This way we could make a little cash for space we were not really using and help out people that were looking for a room. The man that we ended up renting to seemed like a pretty normal guy at first. The interview went great and he had steady looking income from his information and he was willing to pay exactly what we were asking. We took him on as a renter and for the first couple of months it went great. We barely noticed that he was even around because he had his own bathroom, so he really only came into the main areas to use the kitchen to come and go out the front door. He seemed to mainly want a place to sleep and hang around on his days off. After the first couple of months without issues is when things started to get a little messed up. I was the first to notice a very weird smell coming from his room. I had no idea how to ask him about it, so my husband did, and he said that he would clean up the room and get rid of the smell. It never went away though, and honestly started getting worse. We wanted to go inside and see what he was doing, but he did not want to let us into the room. He even installed his own locks without getting any kind of permission. He had locks before, but we had a master key in case we really needed to get inside. While I understand when you rent a room to people they have a right to privacy, I could tell this went beyond that. The smell was too bad and we had to go inside and make sure that he was not going to cause a problem where the entire house would end up smelling or getting rats or something. It was in the contract that we had the right to enter under these circumstances. My husband broke the door down one day when he was at work and we went inside. It was horrible in there, and I will just give you a basic picture. There was old food all over the floor that I thought would have been the smell. Instead though, the smell was actually drugs that he seemed to be using the room for as his center of operations. It was clear that he was selling drugs and that his actual job was a front end and did not actually exist. My guess is the bad food was meant to try and mask the drug smell. We were not happy and immediately gave notice to kick this guy out of our house. We were not about to get arrested for housing a drug dealer in our property. We kicked him out and honestly, he seemed to go pretty quietly. The thing is that I didn't know at the time that this was a scam. A couple days later we were coming home from dinner and our keys did not seem to be working on the front door. It was strange, and lights were on that I know we turned off. A head pops out of one of the windows and it is none other than our ex-renter. He had broken into the house and then changed the locks to keep us out. I was in total shock while my husband was beyond angry and having a screaming match from the front lawn up to the window where the renter had holed himself up. Husband, get out of my house! Ex-renter, you don't deserve a house like this! You did not appreciate what you had and even ended up trying to give up one of the rooms. To me, he was not making any sense, and I would not be surprised if he had taken some of the drugs before this conversation started. Husband, you were evicted and you have no rights to break into my house and change the locks. Ex-renter, I had a contract and you illegally kicked me out of my property. You don't want to let me keep the room I deserve, so I'm going to take the entire house that you don't deserve. Meanwhile, I am calling the police, telling them what happened and that we needed somebody to come and get him out. Squatter rights can be very confusing and I know people have issues with it. The thing is that since he actually moved out fully a couple of days before, he was not considered squatting. He simply broke into the house, so that is what the police were considering. A very odd break-in with the person still inside of the house. We told them the whole story of us renting a room to him, only to find out that he was dirty and seemed to be dealing drugs. Just a note, we did file a report about the drugs after we evicted him. The police busted down the door and ran upstairs to go and get him. We were told to stay back so we didn't see anything, but I heard a lot of yelling and cursing on his end about how this is his room and he has rights. I guess he did have rights because they started reading them to him right there when they placed him under arrest for breaking into our house. It got weirder because he tried to sue us for wrongful eviction, and that put a pause on his charge for breaking and entering. We provided the court with the contracts and the photo evidence of what the state of the room was like. On paper, it was a cut and dry eviction, and he was told that we had the right to keep his security deposit for the damages of the smell. This also meant his other case for breaking into the house could continue. He was guilty, of course, and ended up having to pay us to change the locks again, and to replace the doors the police had to kick in. The drug issue had nothing to do with us, so I don't really know what happened to him in regards to that. We ended up getting the money we needed and fixed the house up. We also decided that we were never going to rent out a room again, because we didn't want to be put in a situation like that once again. My husband suggested taking out a restraining order so that if he ever tried to come near or in the house again, he was going to end up facing much worse consequences. I agreed with him, but we are lucky enough that we have never seen that man again. I hope I never do, because I feel like either my husband or I will want to punch him right in the face if we ever see him close to us again. And the next one is titled Greatest Petty Revenge. I'm a woman that works in IT and has done so for over 15 years at this point. I have done everything from tier 1 support to server management, and at one point I was the IT manager for a company for many years. Needless to say, I'm pretty well versed in computers and troubleshooting. I had moved states and just started out at a new company and only been there a few weeks. A ticket came in for someone that basically said, "My computer is not working," so I walked over to their desk to see what was going on. Being new, I am very sweet, and I guess to some people it means I'm an idiot. The guy, I later learned was in his 50s, and we will call him Jack, angrily asked who I was and where was the former technician. I then explained he was no longer there and I was a new tech. He then asked for 2 other people who were both busy and finally just said, "I'll just wait till they are done." Now, I understand there are some people who just prefer to work with specific other people, and that is fine, but this was not the case. I said, "Okay, no problem, I will let them know and they can help when they are available." Being fairly new, I did not want to make a huge big issue out of it, so I just let them both know that he had asked for either of them specifically. Tom, tech number 1, just rolled his eyes and said, "Then he can wait." Bill, aka tech number 2, kind of chuckled and said, "That's fine, I'll go over there this afternoon." For the next few hours we were sharing stories of ridiculous tickets we have gotten in our careers and some of the jerks we have had to deal with. About 4 hours later, Bill decides to head over to Jack's desk to see what the issue was. He started complaining about his monitor flickering and going black every few minutes and how he has not been able to get any work done all day because we took so long to respond, and now he's going to be late submitting his project that was due today. Bill fiddles with a few things and after about 30 minutes calls us up and specifically asked for me to come over. I get there and he explains what he saw and everything he checked so far but still couldn't get it working. No problem, let me have a look. Within 20 seconds I figured out the issue and within 5 minutes the issue was resolved. Jack just gave me a solemn "thanks" afterwards. Bill made a big show of how I was such an awesome addition to their team and he was so glad I got hired there. It felt good. We walked away and secretly I knew Bill knew how to fix it and it was all for the show, but still. I have an amazing team. I've not had a problem with anyone else in the company other than the normal most people hate IT regardless. For anyone wondering, it was a driver update. And yeah, Ripe Stars, you should certainly never underestimate new people in your company and definitely should not berate them, unless that is what you want to do and then something like this can happen to you. Anyway, the next one is titled Most Malicious Compliance. I run a repair shop where I employ a bunch of local kids ages 16 plus to learn skills and make some money, while we generally sit around and talk about the world while we fix things. We had a client come in with a busted electronic, we fixed it up for her and gave her a decent discount on the work. Her final bill for parts and 4 hours of labor was $100 even, discounted down from $220. She did not like the bill and she did not like the work. She claimed that we had broken something else. She claimed that the kid who did the work did not know what she was doing. She did, and I had supervised her, and that the kid who helped her in the front room was rude to her, aka he wasn't, but she didn't like the little pride flag pin he was wearing. She demanded to see the manager, so I popped out, listened to her tear into my kids, validated how she was feeling, but pointed out that the work she had asked for was done correctly, and her bill was due on pickup of the piece. The last straw for her came when she pulled out a credit card and I had to inform her that we don't accept that particular card. She literally asked me, "Do you know who I am?" Which I didn't, I still don't and don't care, and I told her we would take a personal check. She wrote out a check and problem solved. I deposited the day's check and got a note from my bank that one had bounced. Her check, of course. I called her the next day to inform her that her check had been returned for insufficient funds and that she would need to come in and pay her bill, plus the extra fee for a returned check. All of these fees, just to point this out, were clearly outlined on the service agreement she had signed, and we had already discounted her $120 just to be nice. Anyway, she rolls up into the office carrying a bag and I knew exactly what was going on. She drops, of course, a bag of pennies on the front desk. She is breathing heavily. We are on the second floor and she had taken the stairs, and she announces triumphantly that she is here to pay her bill. She just needs to go get the rest of our hard-earned money, said with a sneer of course, and the kid at the front desk looks like he's about to cry. So I stop working on the thing I'm working on and take over. "How many more bags do you have?" I ask her, and she says that the nice people at the bank loaded them up in her car. She did not count them. I told her that was fine and we would wait for her to bring them all up and then settle up her bill. She was expecting a bigger reaction, I think, either that or she had not thought this through. 10,000 pennies plus the extra $25 weighs a lot, and she had just committed to carrying them through a parking lot and up a flight of stairs. One of my kids, bless his heart, offered to help her carry them, but she refused. Finally, shaking and sweaty, she deposited the last of the bags on the countertop. The pennies were loose, not in coin rolls. She had done some work to prove her point. What she hadn't counted on was that we would need to count the pennies. While the other kids took care of other clients and fixed things in the back, the front desk guy and I counted up the pennies. She started to realize that this was going to take a while and tried to leave. I told her that she could not leave until we had signed off on her bill, and since at this point she was in violation of her service agreement and had passed a bad check, we could not just take her word for it. And I would inform our local constabulary if she left without paying. I was kind of talking out of my ass, but she had managed to tick me off a little. The other clients in the shop came and went and we counted. Phone calls came in and were handled by my kids and we counted. She sat down in a chair, folding steel, not super comfortable, stood up again, walked around the office and we counted. After a while she said, "Just forget it," and took out $125 in bills. We signed off on her agreement and she started to leave. Another one of my kids, bless his heart as well, asked her if she wanted help carrying the pennies back to her car. She looked at all of us with a face of sheer panic, mumbled, "No thank you, just keep them," and bolted. The whole shop was silent for a moment and then one of the kids started giggling and nobody could stop. People coming in thought we had gone nuts and I finally had to banish everybody to the back room until they could breathe again. We loaded the bags into my vehicle, we used the elevator she had walked by a few times, took them to the bank and used the coin machine to deposit them, then wrote out a donation to our local shelter for the amount she had dropped off. She posted something nasty on Facebook about it and got ratioed. And I think ripe stars getting ratioed means that you get a lot of dislikes or something. She had of course posted earlier about what she was going to do and she got called out with her own post. My favorite response was something like, "You said you were going to pay your bill in pennies. You paid your bill in pennies. What went wrong? Please don't pay your bills in pennies, folks." Especially if you're just doing it to be a dick. And yeah, ripe stars, if you're spiteful and trying to act vicious, then at least do it right. This lady didn't get anything right, she was just a douchebag. And the next one is titled, "Entitled person claims she now owns my dog." I totally forgot this happened until recently. This story is a couple years old. I rescued my dog from a pretty bad situation. I will share his rescue story a bit later. Most likely on this subreddit, as his old owners did not think what they did was wrong. At this point, Huck is almost 7 years old and I've had him for almost 6 years. I rescued him when he was a year old. I was playing with him in the field that was close to my house. A woman saw us and started walking closer to us. I put Huck back on a leash and started walking home when she started following. Okay, no big deal, until she started talking to us. Entitled woman, excuse me, that's my dog. I did not realize she was talking to me. I don't know why, as I was the only one there. But obviously, he was not hers. EW, hey, that's my dog. I finally realized she was talking to me. No, he is not, I answered. I was 17 at the time and I was really shy anyways, so I hated talking to people. EW, yes he is. She shouted, come here Max. Huck completely ignored her. He only responds to his name. Huck is not really a people person. He is a one-family dog. He really only loves his family. He is friendly but is not interested in meeting new people. EW, my dog ran away last month, and that's him. Come here baby. Me, then he's not yours. I've had him for 6 years now, but good luck on finding your dog. Let's go. I started walking home and she continues to follow me. She is on the phone and I overhear her. EW, there's a girl stealing my dog. She called the police, I went home and she followed. I told my mom, sister and twin brother came out. The cops came not that long later. I have complete records for Huck, including shots, neuter, microchip, etc. Once the cops show up, this woman starts screaming, EW, she stole my dog. She came into my property and stole him. I want my dog back. Give him back, he is mine. One cop manages to calm her down as the other talks to us. Cop, what happened? Me? I was playing with my dog. She came up, started saying that he was hers and followed me home. In retrospect, I probably should not have shown her where I live, but I was scared and thought telling my mom was the best thing. We moved a few months later anyways. I had put Huck inside. The woman cannot find proof that he was hers. We have vet records, pictures dating back all the way to 2011, etc. The last few months we lived there, she was always watching us and kept trying to call Huck over when he was off leash outside. He never went to her and never paid any attention to her. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, what would you do if someone tried to steal your dog in such a stupid manner? My neighbor took pictures of my grass to email code enforcement. I bought a cute ranch home in the middle of a larger city. It had a nice sized front yard covered in grass when I moved in. I had never had a property with a lawn, so I did my best to keep it up, watered it, mowed frequently, etc. After a few months of me living there, I started getting notifications on my door every single time my lawn got a little too long. I just kind of shrugged off the first few, but then it kept happening and I was still mowing regularly, so I didn't understand why. I finally got a hold of the folks at Code Enforcement and found out I was getting tagged because there was grass that was over 6 inches on the inside of my planter where no one could have really seen it. Okay, fine, so I buy a weed whacker. I kept my lawn in just okay condition, better than most of the neighbors but not as good as some. Months go by and everything is fine, and then again I get another violation for my grass being unkempt. But this time I have no clue why. I just mow again, making sure to hit every damn spot. Then another period of calm and no citations. A few months pass and I had to take my car in to have some work done. I dropped my car off for a couple of days and took to walking to work. On the second day, I look out my window and see my neighbor outside coaxing my grass up. It was a kind that grew kind of long but stayed flat on the ground, with a ruler in one hand and a camera in the other. It was my damn neighbor. He had been taking pictures of my lawn whenever any part of it was standing over 6 inches tall or could be positioned to stand over 6 inches tall. He thought I was gone because my car was not there, so he let himself onto my property to muster up another complaint. So I asked him what he was doing and find out that him and his mom think I am trashy. That is weird for a young single woman to buy a large house and live there alone. They don't like the type of people I have over. Heavily tattooed bikers and Mexicans were the main complaint. They just didn't like me and they thought I brought the caliber of their neighborhood down. They were also doing this to the black dude who lived across the street, but not to anyone else, even though plenty of people had yards that looked like Sanford and Son. We were obviously the problem. Shake my head. So I tore up every shred of grass and made sure it was all dead. The neighbor was furious at the idea of me having a dirt lawn. He stood outside swearing as we dug it all up. I imagine he complained to the city about that too, but dirt lawns are perfectly allowed. I left it like that through the flood season because my neighbor used to let his dogs out front to run in everyone's yard, and when mine would turn into a mud puddle, he either couldn't let his dogs out or would have to bathe them upon them returning home. Then winter came and I dug out the paths and put in planter boxes for my new huge vegetable garden because I found out growing veggies on the front yard was totally legal. They were built less than a foot from the property line. They were huge and made from old railway ties. I think that is what they are called, the big treated wood used for train tracks. We also built a little free library and installed a bench for the kids right next to their property line and stocked it full of children's books. The little free library was such a hit, they moved the bus stop 3 doors down and picked the kids up there because they would all be by the book stand when the bus came anyways. So the bus began to pick up and drop off kids right in front of my neighbor's house every day. Then came spring and we planted huge crops of all kinds of stuff. The planters took up most of my front yard, so there was all kinds of room. I could not find the time to tend to it, so I hired my neighbor's son, a heavily tattooed, like face and hands and everything, Mexican guy who would go over during the day and take care of the plants with his shirt off while playing Mexican music. The neighbor tried calling the police on my gardener a few times, claiming he was violent or breaking in or whatever. And we also made sure to decorate the crops with all kinds of weird stuff that I really loved but that many would consider tacky. Mostly those shiny, wind twirly things and pink flamingos. I also went ahead and hung year-round Christmas lights to illuminate my garden. Then it became time to harvest. There was tons of food, like more food than we could ever eat, so I started putting boxes of veggies out with big free signs on them, and local low-income folks would come grab everything we couldn't use. Of course, those boxes were where? You guessed it right, next to the property line of the neighbor. Those neighbors hated me with a passion by the time I sold that house. The best part is that when I went back to that city a few years after I sold the home and the vegetable garden is still there, going strong, and the new resident has painted the house bright purple and has a bunch of huge metallic lawn frogs and jumbo metal flowers all over the place. And they put these tower type things in for climbing plants to grow up and a cover to give some more shade. It looks even more gaudy than when I left. Even better than that, there was a huge rainbow flag mounted by their mailbox, and the old neighbors thought that sort of thing is a sin. To be fair, I didn't really do all that just because of my neighbor. I was planning on putting in a vegetable garden in my backyard, but I had a large fire pit and entertaining area out back, so it would have been a fairly small vegetable garden, or I would have had to sacrifice my hangout space. So having motivation to put it elsewhere was a blessing in disguise. If I hadn't already wanted a vegetable garden, I likely would have just gotten like 300 flamingos and converted my lawn into their sanctuary. And guys, I gotta say, I don't even know which category this story really belongs to. I suppose it's a mix of malicious compliance and petty revenge. However, there couldn't really have been a better outcome for this. Pissing off your neighbors from hell, all the while you're also helping other people and getting petty revenge? That is just brilliant if you ask me.